Have you ever wondered how the quest for resources can shape international relations? Let's delve into the ongoing conflict between Venezuela and Guyana over the Essequibo territory. The roots of this conflict stretch back into the 19th century, specifically the year 1899. This territory, known as Essequibo, has been a bone of contention between these two nations, each asserting their claim over it. Guyana asserts that the existing borders should remain untouched, while Venezuela counters this claim, proposing that the Essequibo River should serve as the true demarcation line. Over the decades, the diplomatic efforts to resolve this dispute have largely been fruitless. The issue is complex, the stakes are high, and the resolution elusive. Amidst this stalemate, the International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, has stepped in, currently deliberating over the matter. The historical dispute, however, has taken a new turn in the recent years. And the catalyst for this change? The discovery of vast oil reserves in the disputed region. A resource that is as much a promise of prosperity as it is a source of conflict. This newfound wealth has not only intensified the dispute, but also added a new dimension to it. As the dispute lingers, the discovery of vast oil reserves in the disputed region has added a new dimension to the conflict. Oil, often referred to as black gold, has a way of intensifying conflicts, and the Venezuela-Guyana dispute is no exception. The Essequibo region, a territory rich in history and controversy, is now also rich in oil. The discovery of these vast oil reserves has added a new layer of complexity to the long-standing territorial dispute between Venezuela and Guyana. The potential for economic growth with the exploitation of these oil reserves is enormous. For Venezuela, a country with an economy in crisis, the allure of this black gold is understandably potent. However, the pursuit of this opportunity is not without its drawbacks. Venezuela's economy is already struggling, and annexing the Essequibo territory for its oil reserves could potentially exacerbate the country's economic woes rather than alleviate them. On the other side of the dispute, Guyana also sees the oil reserves as a significant economic opportunity. With the potential for an oil boom, Guyana could transform its economy, creating jobs and driving growth. However, the shadow of conflict with Venezuela threatens to overshadow these positive prospects. Despite the potential economic benefits, the pursuit of these oil reserves has only served to escalate the conflict between these two nations. The stakes have been raised, and the potential for a resolution seems even more elusive. As the tension mounts, the international community watches on, wary of the potential for further escalation. Among the observers, the United States has not remained silent. The U.S. has expressed support for Guyana and warned against another conflict in its backyard. This statement from the U.S. underscores the global significance of this dispute, and the potential implications it could have far beyond the borders of Venezuela and Guyana. The U.S. has expressed support for Guyana and warned against another conflict in its backyard, which leads us to the role of the U.S. in this dispute. The United States, a global superpower, has always played a significant role in international disputes. Let's see how it is involved in the Venezuela-Guyana conflict. As the Venezuela-Guyana dispute continues to escalate, the United States has taken a clear stand, expressing support for Guyana and warning against further conflict. This firm stance is a testament to the U.S.'s commitment to maintaining peace and order in the region. The United States' involvement in this dispute isn't merely verbal. In response to Venezuela's announcement of creating a new administrative division for the disputed Essequibo territory, the U.S. Embassy in Georgetown conducted joint military flight operations. This action sends a robust message to Venezuela, making it clear that any aggressive moves will be met with a strong response. These flight operations are an essential tool in the U.S.'s diplomatic arsenal, serving as a powerful reminder of the military might that the U.S. possesses. By conducting these operations, the United States is not only standing by its ally Guyana, but also reinforcing its position as a global superpower, ready to intervene when international peace and order are threatened. But why is the U.S. so invested in this dispute? The answer lies in the geopolitical implications. Venezuela's aggressive stance, fueled by its economic crisis and the discovery of oil reserves in the disputed territory, poses a potential threat to regional stability. This, in turn, could have far-reaching consequences, affecting the U.S.'s interests in the region. Furthermore, the dispute also has implications for Venezuela's relations with the U.S. and its allies. With Venezuela's ability to produce and export oil severely limited by U.S. sanctions, the outcome of this conflict could significantly impact the economic dynamics of the region and beyond. The U.S.'s involvement is a clear indication of the geopolitical implications of the conflict. In a bid to assert its claim, Venezuela held a national referendum on the future of the Essequibo territory. Let's explore what this means for the dispute. The referendum, held on December 3rd, was a pivotal moment in the long-standing border conflict between Venezuela and Guyana. The aim? To decide the future of the disputed Essequibo territory, a region rich in oil reserves and currently controlled by Guyana but claimed by Venezuela. Now, the timing of the referendum is intriguing. It's been suggested that the decision by President Nicolas Maduro to hold this vote was driven not just by territorial ambitions, but by domestic politics. Faced with an economic crisis and upcoming presidential elections, Maduro's move could be seen as an attempt to rally support and undermine opposition within Venezuela. But what about the referendum itself? Well, it included questions about recognizing the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice over the dispute, and about setting up an Essequibo state with Venezuelan citizenship for its residents. These are significant moves that could have far-reaching implications for the dispute. However, the referendum has not been without controversy. Concerns have been raised about inflated turnout numbers, casting doubts over the legitimacy of the vote. On top of this, President Maduro's order for foreign companies to vacate the area within 3 months, and his offer of exploration and exploitation licenses could be seen as an aggressive stance on the Essequibo, likely to further escalate tensions. So, what does this mean for the future of the dispute? The referendum has undoubtedly added a new dimension to the conflict. While it may whip up nationalism within Venezuela, it could also fuel international tensions and impact Venezuela's relations with the US and its allies. And let's not forget the economic implications. Given Venezuela's struggling economy, pursuing annexation of the Essequibo may not bring the expected economic benefits and could instead lead to further instability. As the dispute continues, the risk of a war for oil looms, but is it likely? While the situation is undoubtedly tense and the stakes are high, the prospect of an all-out war for oil seems unlikely at present, given Venezuela's limited ability to produce and export oil due to US sanctions. Nevertheless, the dispute over the Essequibo territory remains a complex and volatile issue, with the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape in the region. The specter of a war for oil hangs over the Venezuela-Guyana conflict, but is it a likely outcome? As we delve into this, it's important to understand the factors that could lead to a military escalation. First, let's look at Venezuela's economic situation. The nation is in the throes of an economic crisis, with its ability to produce and export oil severely limited. This situation is further complicated by US sanctions. The pressing economic conditions could potentially push Venezuela into taking a more aggressive stance. However, the country's economic struggles also make it less capable of sustaining a military conflict. Secondly, the aggressive exploration activities by oil giants in the disputed area are adding fuel to the fire. These actions, seen as a unilateral extraction of natural resources by Guyana, have escalated tensions. The stakes are high, and the lure of oil wealth may tempt both nations to take drastic actions. However, despite these tensions, there is currently no concrete evidence suggesting military preparations by either side. With the international community closely watching, any overt military action would likely draw global condemnation and further isolation, especially for Venezuela. The US, while supportive of Guyana, has warned against another conflict in its own backyard. This stance could potentially act as a deterrent against any military escalation. The US's involvement in the dispute, although indirect, is a significant factor to consider. The possibility of a war for oil cannot be completely ruled out, given the high stakes and the historical context of the dispute. But it's also important to remember that wars are costly, both in terms of finances and human lives. Both Venezuela and Guyana are acutely aware of these costs. As we watch the events unfold, the question remains: will the quest for oil lead to war, or will diplomacy prevail in the end? Given the potential for escalation we've just discussed, it's crucial to consider the alternatives to conflict. Diplomacy in this case could very well be the key to resolving the Venezuela-Guyana oil dispute. Over the years, we've seen diplomacy play a pivotal role in diffusing tensions and averting crises. The international community, led by the United Nations, has a long history of mediating disputes, particularly those involving natural resources. In the case of the Venezuela-Guyana conflict, diplomacy has been and continues to be the preferred path. Despite the heightened tensions and the underlying economic pressures, both nations have repeatedly expressed their commitment to a peaceful resolution. This is a promising sign, suggesting that the potential for dialogue and negotiation is very much alive. However, the success of diplomatic efforts is contingent on many factors, including the willingness of all parties involved to compromise and the ability to ensure that any agreement is respected and enforced. In the context of the Venezuela-Guyana dispute, the role of the international community, and particularly the US, could be crucial in facilitating a diplomatic solution. Ultimately, the possibility of a war for oil cannot be ignored, but neither can the power of diplomacy. As we move towards a future where the value of resources like oil continues to rise, the importance of peaceful diplomatic solutions to disputes over these resources cannot be overstated. Before we wrap up, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. Stay tuned for our next video where we will explore more geopolitical hotspots and the power plays that shape our world.